My grandson borrowed my car, promising to return it in an hour. The next day I saw it listed online for sale under his name. I didn't call him. I called someone else instead. The buyer wasn't who he expected. If you're reading this right now, tell me where you're watching from. City, street, the room you're in. Because I want to remember the exact place you were when I tell you the moment my heart went cold. I want to picture the light on your walls and the sound outside your window. The way I remember the porch light glinting on chrome the evening my grandson said, "Just an hour, Grandpa," while the cicadas chirped like they were keeping time for a lie. I want you anchored somewhere real as I speak, because this isn't a story about a car, not truly. It's a story about how the people we love test the shape of our love, and how that shape can turn into a blade if you're not careful. So tell me where you are, in the comments in your own words, and then come closer. I'm going to speak plainly. I'm going to speak slowly. I'm going to tell you what I did when I saw my memories tagged with a price, and my last bit of trust folded into a listing description like it was a selling point. He came by just before sunset, hands in his pockets, that same half-smile he wore as a child when he'd done something he wasn't sure I'd like, but hoped I'd forgive. "I need the car for an hour, Grandpa," he said, rocking on his heels. "Just an hour. I promised Mia I'd swing by her place and take her to see a friend about some camera equipment. She'll be upset if I'm late." He smelled faintly of cologne, the kind that comes in a square bottle and feels like it should be expensive, but isn't. His hair was combed too carefully, like he'd practiced for a mirror that kept telling him he looked grown. Behind him, the sky had turned the color of an old bruise, purple folding into blue. I looked over his shoulder at the car in the driveway. My car, though I had never thought of it as only mine. My wife, God rest her, used to rest her hand on the dash like it was an animal that needed calming on rough roads. "Just an hour," he repeated. "I'll have it back before you sit down for the game." There are lies that hiss and lies that purr. His purred. I handed him the keys like a man handing over a small boat to someone who swears he can swim. The key metal was warm from the day. It flashed once under the porch light like it had winked at me. "Be careful," I said. He rolled his eyes the way young men do when old men remind them that bodies can break and roads can bite. "You worry too much," he said, and he leaned in and kissed my cheek. Too quick, too light. And then he was down the steps, driver's door open, engine catching. He gave me a thumbs up I'd taught him years ago and then drove off. The taillights were two red eyes rushing to the end of the street. They blinked when he hit the stop sign, hesitated like a heartbeat, and were gone. The first hour was easy. I poured myself tea and put the cup down on the coaster my wife had embroidered decades ago with our initials entwined. I told myself there was no rush. I told myself this was what trust felt like when it was fully grown. You let go, and you didn't watch the door every 5 minutes. By the second hour, I had started counting the sounds outside the house. A dog bark, a pair of teenagers laughing too loudly as they walked past, the low hum of a delivery van. By the third hour, I had started rehearsing the first line of a message that would sound like concern and not control. It was past midnight when I stopped pretending to be patient. I called, no answer. I texted, delivered, not read. I sat up until the house felt like a night-colored glove around my chest, and then I drifted in a chair like a fisherman with lines in the dark, praying something would tug. Dawn came pale and jittery. I fell asleep with my cheek on the armrest and woke with a knot in my neck and grit behind my eyes. There are mornings that give you back what you lost. This one did not. Old men like me, we have routines. Mine is coffee, the paper, and recently, the cracked little screen where the world announces itself. Today's outrage, today's weather, today's pictures of strangers' breakfasts. I wasn't looking for my car. I was looking for a mindless scroll, a kind of white noise to settle the thoughts that had begun to pace. The listing found me before I found it. Classic sedan, well-maintained, family-owned, priced to sell. The picture was cheap and honest, and it cut me like a thin, straight line. I recognized the porch behind it. My porch. My mailbox with the dent where the snowplow once kissed it. The angle my wife used to say, "Gets my good side" when she posed with the car on summer afternoons. And then the name. In black plain type, no apology. Contact, Eli H. My grandson's name, my last initial, stamped there like a signature forged by a child copying from a note. There are many kinds of grief. The one for the living is the meanest. I felt something harden in my chest like water freezing in a pipe. My first thought was not rage, not even sadness. It was very oddly embarrassment. This idea that he had put our private shame on a shelf and invited strangers to pick it up and check the seams. He had listed a price. He had written, "Only serious buyers, cash preferred." He had added a little wink emoji, as if flirting with whoever would come. I stared until the edges of the phone blurred. I scrolled to see the description twice, as if reading it again might make it change. It did not. The same lines, the same lack of conscience. He claimed he had the title. He did not. He claimed he had full rights. He did not. But more than the lies, it was the cheerfulness that undid me. That chirpy tone we all use when we don't think anyone real is listening. Only I was listening. Only I was counting the miles on my memories and watching them be marked down for a quick sale. I could have called him. That is what you expect. That is what he expected. He expected my voice to break, my words to tumble over themselves, my anger to swing wide, sloppy and wild, where he could catch it and fold it into a story he tells his friends. My grandpa's going senile. He doesn't understand. He's overreacting. He expected me to become the villain in a tale where he was only doing what he had to do. And I will tell you, because I am trying to be honest, that the thought of dialing him and saying what I wanted to say leaped up like a hot animal inside me. But there is a thing I have learned from a long marriage and longer grief, and it is this: the first words you taste are not always the ones worth speaking. I set the phone down. I breathed. I let my heart beat slow. I went to the old safe in the corner of the bedroom, the one that has been opened more by my fingers than by any key, and I turned the dial with the same steady patience you give to stubborn things that still deserve mercy. The title was where I had left it. Crisp paper with edges like polite manners. My wife's handwriting danced in a neat tag on the envelope, a tiny note she'd penned the day we carried the car home, laughing about how the salesman called me sir a little too often, like he could talk me out of my own name. Inside the safe were other things, photographs that smell faintly of cedar, a thin box of medals I never talk about, a letter I have not had the courage to read in years. I took the title and laid it on the bedspread, squared it to the pattern the way she used to square picture frames that tilted in our hallway. And because there was a colder thought moving calmly beneath the ache, I took out my phone and scrolled past the listing again, this time not as a grandfather. This time as a buyer. There is a man I have known for 40 years who never changes the part in his hair and never forgets a favor. He is not a policeman, but he knows the shape of trouble like fishermen know currents. He can feel where it is and where it will be. He answered on the second ring. "It's me," I said, and my voice was quiet, but it did not shake. "I need someone who can play a role for an afternoon." He said, "Which role?" And I said, "The kind that makes a boy wish he had told the truth." He laughed once, soft and sympathetic, and then he stopped. "Send me the details," he said. I did. He called back 5 minutes later, with a plan that did not require yelling, only timing. The listing said to message for the meeting place. I typed like any cash buyer would, short, impatient, a little pushy. He replied quickly. "Parking lot behind the old hardware store, noon." He added, "Bring cash, and please don't waste my time." Imagine saying that to the man who taught you to whistle by using 2 fingers and patience. Imagine saying that to the man who bought you your first school shoes when your father was sick and the bills were heavy. I did not reply. I left the message hanging there like a bell that wouldn't be rung. I took a shower and shaved the way my wife liked, careful under the jaw. I put on a clean shirt and the watch she gave me the year before she left the world without taking anything with her, but her breath. I stood in the mirror and tried the face I wear when I need to be colder than my blood. It fit. I picked up the title, slid it into a folder, and went to the door. The morning had brightened to that weak, agreeable blue that makes even old brick look polite. The hardware store had died, the way such stores do, one nail at a time. Now it was a shuttered shell with a faded sign that still promised keys cut while you wait. The lot behind it was flat, cracked, weeds thin as paper hair poking through the lines. He was already there, standing next to the car, my car, hood wiped to a shine that did not touch the places where time had left its fingerprints. He had brought along a friend I recognized as the kind who always nods and laughs 3 seconds too late. My old friend, let's call him Harris, pulled in after me, slow and square, the way men drive when they want you to think you could count their breaths. He stepped out with a smile that would have sold the sun on a cloudy day. "You must be Eli," he said, and he held out a hand. My grandson took it, gripping firm, looking older than his years by intention. "You must be the buyer," he said. "Cash, right?" Harris patted his jacket like a man who keeps weather in his pockets. "Cash," he said. "It is a strange thing, watching your grandson try on dishonor like a suit he plans to wear to a party." He walked them around the car and said all the things I had said to him as a boy. Listen to the engine, feel how the door closes, see how the seats hold you like hands. He used my words like stolen silverware. Polished, a little heavy, not his. "Title?" Harris asked, leaning over the hood as if he could hear the truth in the metal. "At home," my grandson lied too quickly. "I'll bring it by after you pay." Harris let the wind carry a small laugh. "Now, son," he said, "we're not in the kind of neighborhood where people pay before the paperwork." He lifted his eyes, slow and kind. "Call the owner," he said. "Have him meet us here. 5 minutes we sign, we're done." The friend coughed into his fist. My grandson's mouth flattened into that tight line I used to see when he was 6, and I told him no more cookies. "There's no need," he said. "I'm the owner." He jerked his chin at the car. "Family owned, like I said." He looked right at me then, and for a sliver of a second I thought he would break, drop his gaze, cough out a confession, shake his head and tell me he had been stupid, not cruel. But he held my eyes the way a drowning man will hold the rope that isn't there. He turned back to Harris. "Do you want it or not?" he said. "I've got other buyers waiting." Harris let the words hang in the air until they thinned. Then he pressed his palm flat to the hood, as if greeting a dog he liked. "One more question," he said, and his voice moved down a step, comfortable as a chair. "If you're the owner, what's the name on the title?" Silence is a clean sound when it's chosen. When it's forced, it scratches on its way down. The lot went very quiet. Even the weeds seemed to stop breathing. My grandson's friend looked at him like he had expected a line that never came. It's in the family," my grandson said at last. "You know how these things are. Paperwork is complicated," he tried to laugh. "It didn't stick." Harris raised his eyebrows the way men do when they feel they've given you every chance to climb out of a hole. He glanced over at me, and the movement was so slight you would have missed it if you weren't looking for it. I stepped forward, slow, the folder tucked under my arm. "I can answer that," I said, my voice flat, my mouth relaxed, my heart steady, then steadier. "The name on the title is mine." I said my full name and watched it land on my grandson's face. It startled him like a cold wave. He turned to me fully then. His eyes were wide and raw. "Grandpa, I can explain." Those words are always the wreckage after the crash. "You must be quick about it," I said softly. "We are in a parking lot and I dislike theater." I placed the folder on the hood and did not look at my hands. I opened it and lifted the paper, and there it was. The neat box of ownership with my name sitting inside like a bird in a cage, and the signature I had practiced for decades, mine and hers, sweeping and sure. I let Harris read it, slow, careful. He nodded, appreciative of good paper. "Well," he said mildly, "it seems the seller forgot to bring the most important part of the sale." He eased the title back into its sleeve and closed the folder like a man closing a hymnal. He turned to my grandson. "No deal," he said. "Not today." It should have ended there, with the clean slice of truth and the sale undone. But there is pride, and pride is the stubborn son of shame. "You can't embarrass me like this," my grandson said under his breath, his mouth close to my ear, his words hot and small. "You're making a scene. You're acting like I'm a thief." I looked at him and saw 3 boys layered over one another. The baby who drooled on my shoulder. The child who raced the dog across the yard. The teenager who looked at the world like it was money he needed to make. "You took what was mine without asking," I said in a voice so calm it made me a stranger. You took what was hers without care. Then you put a price on it. I am not calling you a thief. I am letting your actions introduce you, he swallowed. His friend had drifted back, hands in his pockets, measuring exits. Harris cleared his throat lightly, a reminder that a gentleman does not linger where he is not wanted. And because I am a man who still believes in the thin beauty of family even when it has been stretched, I put a hand on my grandson's shoulder, not rough, not kind, and I said, "You are going to walk to the passenger side. You are going to sit. You are going to listen to me drive us back to my house. If you do not, you will be explaining to your mother why a policeman." I glanced at Harris and he smiled, small and cool. Why a man like my friend had to ask more direct questions. "Do you understand?" He nodded. It is a hard thing for a proud boy to nod. Somewhere a dog barked twice with real joy, because dogs do not know hypocrisy, and God bless them for that. The ride home was inhalations and exhalations, and the sound of the tires remembering every street they had ever known. He stared straight ahead, and I let the silence press us together until it started to do its work. When we reached the house, I parked, took the keys from the ignition, and let them rest in my palm, heavy as a lesson. He opened his mouth and closed it. "Inside," I said, and we went to the kitchen, where the light is always gentle in late morning because of the way the windows face the yard. My wife used to keep a vase there with the least impressive flowers she could find, because she said they deserved 2 weeks to feel special. The vase was empty now, but the light stayed kind. "I didn't think you'd see it," he said after a while. The stupidity of that sentence was almost elegant. "That's the thing about the truth," I said. "It doesn't need you to introduce it. It shows up." He shuffled his feet. "I needed the money," he said. "Mia's been on me about savings and bills, and I thought if I flipped the car, I could—" He shrugged. The shrug made me older somehow. "You could sell a story of struggle where the first act is theft," I said. "You could dress wrong as need. A common costume." He stared at the table. "I was going to buy you something better," he offered weakly. "Grandpa, I swear I was." I laughed, but there was no mirth in it. "Better," I repeated. "You do not yet know what that word means. This car is not a machine to me. It is Christmas trips and bad roadside coffee that tasted good because she was awake beside me. It is the glove she left in the back seat one February and never found because I liked knowing something of hers waited for her every time we drove. Better. Find me a machine that can unspool the past and hand it back, and I'll call it better." He flinched. The boy has a good heart. It is simply at times rented out to cheap ideas. "I'll fix it," he said. "Tell me what to do." I looked at him for a long time. Then I reached for the phone and pressed the speaker button and dialed his mother. She answered cheerful, because she is always cheerful, until she is not. I told her what he had done. My voice did not waver and I did not add adjectives. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she was very quiet. "Bring him by," she said finally. "We'll talk here." I ended the call and put the phone down. He stared at it like it might bite him. "I'm sorry," he said. "You are," I said. "But you are also sorry you were caught." His cheeks flushed. "What do you want me to do?" He said again, louder, a child at the door of a lesson, face hot with the possibility of punishment. I took a breath and let it out slow, like you do before lifting something heavy and precious. "You will take the listing down," I said. "You will message anyone who wrote to you and say the car is not for sale. You will write the words, 'I do not own the title, and it is not mine to sell,' and you will press send without editing them. You will come back here every Saturday for 3 months and wash and wax this car until you understand what it means to care for something that is not simply yours to spend. You will sell the cologne in that fancy bottle and the sneakers you keep in their boxes like investments, and you will hand the money to the girl you say you are trying to impress with savings. And then you will listen to me when I say, trust is not a thing you hold. It is a thing you are. When you are trustworthy, the world feels larger. When you are not, it shrinks to the size of your lies." He nodded. Tears stood up in his eyes like they were at attention and didn't know whether to march. He took his phone out, and I watched his thumbs type, and I watched each message leave like a small admission, and I felt something inside me ease, not fully, but enough that I could breathe without counting. When he was done, he placed the phone gently on the table, both hands on either side like he had built a fence to keep himself from grabbing it back. "Thank you," he said, which was not what I expected. "For not—" He gestured vaguely at the world. "For not blowing up." I smiled, then allowed it to fade. "Son," I said, and the word surprised us both, "I am not a bomb. I am a man with a memory. That is scarier." Later, after I had driven him to his mother's, and after the explanations and the storm and the quiet that follows storms, I came home and stood in the driveway with the car. I ran my fingers along the line where the hood meets the grill, and I spoke to my wife under my breath like a man talking to a photo. "We almost lost it," I said. "But we didn't." I opened the door and sat in the driver's seat and closed my eyes. For a moment I could hear her laugh again, the one that used to make the windshield feel wider. And I felt the ache and the sweetness braiding themselves together like they always do when love is honest. Out on the street, a boy on a bicycle shouted as he missed the curb and corrected and then laughed his own laugh, which sounded like forgiveness in a minor key. Days passed. The listing was gone. He came on Saturday with a bucket and a rag and a posture that suggested humility had begun to loosen his shoulders. The first time he avoided my eyes. The second he held them. People think apologies are sentences. They are not. They are habits you grow. He scrubbed the hubcaps like he was trying to erase something. He did not make speeches. I did not either. We worked. We refrained from saying the easy things and let the hard thing of time do what it does best when you require it to. Witness you behaving differently. A week later, maybe 8 days. It's easy to lose count when your heart is learning. He showed up early. He handed me a small cloth bag. Inside were the watch batteries I keep forgetting to buy and a keychain with our initials braided in dull leather. It was a boyish gift, an awkward one, and it was perfect. "I talked to Mia," he said, staring at the driveway. Told her what I did. She said she didn't want the kind of money that made her feel cheap. He laughed once like it had rust on it. She was right. He looked up. "It won't happen again," he said. People throw those words like rice at a wedding. They drift and they stick and they are more superstition than vow. But this time the way he stood made the sentence heavier. I nodded. "Good," I said. "Because there won't be another chance to return what you tried to sell. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. Neat as a bow on a box. But we are people and people are messy. There were small tests, impulses he swallowed, questions he asked first instead of assuming the world was a vending machine. Once he came by midweek to return a book I hadn't even remembered I lent him. He left it on the porch with a note that said, "I put it back where it belongs." The next Saturday, as he dried the roof of the car, he asked me about Grandma's favorite drive. I told him about the winding road by the lake, where the air smells like pine and the world is made of small flashes of water through trees. He said he wanted to go with me sometime. "Sometime," I said, and I let the word be as gentle as it sounded. You might be thinking about the boy I used to be, the one who would have yelled and threatened and flung words like rocks because the shame was too much to bear quietly. That boy still lives in me in a room with a locked door. I hear him sometimes when the house is quiet, but I keep the key. The thing about age is it doesn't always make you kinder, but it gives you a longer view. I could see him at 28, 32, opening a door and finding nothing but versions of himself who thought shortcuts were roads. I didn't want that for him, so when you ask me why I didn't call him first, why I didn't tear him up with my tongue and law, here is my answer. Because I wanted him to feel the clean shame of being absolutely, unavoidably wrong, and I wanted him to feel it in the presence of someone who would not use it to hurt him further. I wanted him to remember my flat voice and the title paper, and the sunlight on the hood the next time a bad idea put its arm around his shoulders and told him it could solve everything. A month after the parking lot. We took that drive by the lake. He asked if he could take the wheel and I said no without apology. He nodded, a small man learning the difference between desire and right. The road curled and the water winked between the pines, and I could almost hear my wife say, "Now isn't this better than the screens?" Which is what she used to say when the boys were sullen and the world felt far away. We stopped at a small turnout and sat on the hood like teenagers. He kicked his heels softly against the bumper and said, "Grandpa?" I said, He said, "Thank you. For fighting for it. For her. For me." I looked at him then, Really looked, saw the boy and the man he was becoming sitting on either side of the same apology, and my throat went tight.
Families don't take what's yours and tell you you're not welcome, I said.
They take care of what's ours and ask where they can help. He nodded. The wind moved the tops of the trees and made that sound I love, the one that feels like the earth is breathing. We stayed until the sky began to soften, and then we drove back slowly, as if returning from a small war, grateful for the home that awaited us. If you made it this far, you know more than I wanted to admit when this began. You know that the car sits now under the same porch light, a little shinier than before because he has learned the religion of elbow grease. You know that the title is still in the safe, the envelope still with her handwriting on it, and that sometimes I open it for no reason except to see the proof that some things do not belong to the market. You know that a boy tried to be a man by doing a small, cruel thing and learned that manhood is not made of cleverness but of keeping. And you know that the buyer wasn't who he expected, because the buyer was never meant to be a stranger counting bills. The buyer was meant to be the part of himself that could not be bribed, standing beside a quiet old man who remembers names and keeps promises and does not sell love. No, not even when it looks like metal and rubber and a history that gleams. If this story reached you, if it moved you, or made you think about what you've nearly sold for less than it was worth, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me the name of your street, the color of the walls beside you, the sound outside your window right now, and then do me a favor. Like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories like this. Your attention is the currency that keeps these memories alive. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.